And a very good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Issues and Attitudes. My name is Jeff Owens, director at WEIU TV and Radio. My co-host is Robinson's own Cade Slaughter.
That's right. Thank you for having me.
Yep. And our guest today, making his first time appearance, is Mr. Dyke Barkley. He's a Lakeland College horticulture and ag instructor. Welcome, Mr. Barkley.
Yes, thank you for having me.
So I guess we'll talk first about people who don't know a little bit about yourself. Can you talk about your background and how you got to Lakeland and kind of the path?
Yeah, it's kind of a strange path maybe. I actually am a graduate from Lakeland College and grew up here in the area on a family farm and thought that I started at Lakeland in agriculture, actually on the livestock judging team, and thought that's where I was heading. And then had I'm sure my age, but back in the 80s, had a heart-to-heart with the family who said, the family farm's not big enough, come back home. That was a blow I hadn't really thought through all the way, just assumed, one of those deals. Took a horticulture class, fell in love with it, shifted right on into horticulture. And then got into the industry with my horticulture degree and then doing one of those things that sounds really good where you call up mom and dad and said, what do you think about me moving home? And I moved back to the farm and started my greenhouse operation and ran that for about 30 years. So kind of took over a hunk of the farm, and that's where I ran those greenhouses.
And you've been at Lakeland for now 20-some years?
20, yeah. I started part-time 25 years ago. That was another one of those, keep in touch with your old teachers. My old high school teacher hit me up one day and said, do you want to teach a class for me? And that's how I'd never had any designs or any desires or even thought about teaching until, and I'm like, well, how do you teach? What do you, and then you just tell them what you do at work. And so I come to find out that's how I got started.
That's funny. We have similar paths there. So go ahead, Kate.
I'm just curious. So can you, how does the program prepare students for careers in horticulture exactly?
Well, in horticulture and both, I think try to keep it realistic and try and keep it hands-on, not try to me, most of our classes are what I would call a tech degree. So you're trying to teach them some hands-on. What did I need to know to run my business? Or if you come to work for me as an employee, what did you need to know, right? We don't need to know way in-depth genetics breeding because that's not what we're training here, but how do you hook up an irrigation system? How do you know that plant's healthy? How do you fix up that customer's yard? So try to keep it real, so to speak.
How many people or how many students at Lakeland are in your horticultural program?
Horticulture, I need a lot more. I've got about a dozen students, dozen to 15 each year. Mm-hmm. Always need more.
And do they come from local, or are they? Because
most in horticulture, most of them are local. The ag department actually draws from a big, long ways away, and we do get a few because of the name recognition of the ag department. The ag division all over the state of Illinois, and I don't know, somewhere around 10 to 12 different states are actually now going to Lakeland
really?
in the ag division. Yeah.
And you teach both ag and horticulture at Lakeland?
Yeah.
Now, do you have a favorite class you like to teach, and why?
I really like the intro to hort class. It just seeing people make the connections and make the click and teach them why. A lot of them, they come into class and they're like, I've already had this in high school. And they're like, what is photosynthesis? Well, let's back it up. How does that affect on how you water and how you sell that plant, and why did that plant not live? And try to make that connection. And when they finally do and you see it click, that's when it's fun that way.
Okay.
So you kind of touched a little bit on it seems like pest control a little bit there. How often do you usually touch subjects like that? Whenever you're
all the time.
So
in horticulture, it's going to come up all the time, whether it's just me grabbing a sample or today in the morning's class, I handed a student and said, what is this? And it was a praying mantis egg sac, which then another student brought in a praying mantis. So there was my impromptu lecture for the day, even though it was a lab. So, but I think that's what keeps me real and keeps the students real, that, hey, here's something, we just take off and go on that. So we bring it up all the time, and then you have to also, when you're talking pest control, for me, two edges. You got the ultra organic, and then you have the let's kill everything, and you got to find a happy medium. And then actually, how are they going to deal with the customer? Because they can have their own opinion, but they got to deal with that customer. And in horticulture, one of the things I have to remind the students is that average customer is going to be that 60-year-old lady. That's who they're pleasing, if that makes sense. That who has the money and who's going to make the decisions. So,
oh yeah, communication's always important.
Yeah,
that's a good point there. Now, what about conflicts? How do you deal with conflicts with students? And what's the Dyke Barkley way?
I don't know how I deal with conflicts. Change the subject.
Well, you don't have any.
No, you get students in there. But you just trying to get them to talk it out and see all sides. I think maybe, I don't know if you call it the word conflict. I'll have students come in and they'll be really wound up on, and I shouldn't use that word wound up, but they'll be really like, I need organic and everything should be organic. And then you start explaining what organic is. And a lot of it is Lego stuff that doesn't really mean reality. And some of them change and back down. I think you just have to show them all sides.
There you go. You also touched on livestock judging. I know that Lakeland reintroduced that program a few years.
No, actually, it's been going since the 70s. That's almost been one of the first things they did.
But I thought for a while they because I know they won a national award. Because
they went all. I just was reading on I'm reading on Facebook because I haven't talked to anybody yet this morning, but. They did really well over the weekend. I think the freshmen kind of rocked the contest they went to, and they actually do quite well at national contests. So it's a well-known program.
I'm glad to hear that. I didn't know that. So do you remember when you did livestock judging and what you did and then how it's changed to today?
Oh, the animals are completely backwards now. From what I remember, I think I was joking with the judge the other day that if I place them the way it was in the 80s and then reverse it, then I'd have a pretty good chance of winning. And it's just the way we breed and the way you want the animal to look and all of that, I think it's changed that way. Still, the whole purpose of judging is figuring out which is the best. And then in that case, at the college level, they have to actually give reasons to a judge why they did what they did from memory. And that part is all the same, but that takes some skill and some practice.
When you say that livestock has changed, so you're, I guess I just picture a cow right now. So a cow has changed in 30 years.
Well, nobody wants fat anymore. And I'm not a livestock expert, so don't get me pinned on that. But they're looking for leaner animal, more muscle, and they're still going for rate of gain. The bigger, the faster you can get that. Farming, good or bad, agriculture comes down to profit as well. You can't just have everything be pets. You got to be able to grow it. Whether you're growing a plant or growing corn or growing an animal, you got to get it faster and ready for market.
There you go.
So I've always been curious about GMOs personally. How big of a problem really is that people don't really know about?
I think it's bigger. You get me on the sidetrack here. I think it's more of an issue. People don't understand it. There's probably pros and cons, and I don't claim to be an expert, but I think a lot of people that get wound up, and they just need to back up and understand. I mean, when you're thinking of selecting things, that's not necessarily GMO. GMO, you're actually, when most people are talking about it, already talking about manipulating genes. But we've been hand selecting plants for years and years and years, right? I mean, I picked the best plant because it's better, and I've isolated the genetic pool down. So we've been touching and moving it around. I don't know. I think everybody's got their opinion, and that's conflict where I'm going to stay out of it.
I completely.
I think, but most people, if you just back down and ask, why are you so adamant, and then you find out they don't know. Somebody told them that they should be, and you need to really find out who and why.
Is there a big need right now for ag workers out there? Can you tell me what kind of fields that they go into? Because everybody just thinks a traditional farmer, but
well, that's probably where you're seeing the least number. I mean, there's probably less actual farmers than there was in the past. But the supporting role and the technology, somebody's got to drive that spray equipment, somebody's got to spread that fertilizer, and now we don't just chuck it out the back. We got to apply it methodically. You can get into GPS where everything knows where exactly it is on the farm, and I can put 2 pounds over here and put 3 pounds over here. You get into the precision planting end of it. They want to count each kernel and have it put exactly where you want it. You don't just kind of chuck it out there like your vegetable garden and kind of hope. It's gotten a lot more scientific. So I think, and it's no different than anything else in our lives. Man, there's a computer and everything.
Yeah.
And so that's where you're seeing all these jobs and helping with all the support roles to keep everything up and running.
And so you really, as a teacher in the ag horticulture field, you've had to kind of change over the 25 years too, because farmers 25 years ago didn't seem like a computer was something they would ever think about. Now they have them everywhere they go.
Well, and you can even take something like drones, which came on the market since I graduated in college, but at the same time, it was kind of a pipe dream to now you actually see farmers local farmers, not experimental. Local farmers are purchasing and using them to spray fungicide this summer. I ran across 2 or 3 neighbors down the road, so to speak. And so that's one area that's rapidly changed that I thought was still going to be pushed down the road. It's here today. So yes, it's constantly changing. I think one of the things we talk about sometimes as teachers, we're actually training students to do things that we don't even know what they're going to do yet.
Interesting. Very interesting.
So, can you discuss any partnerships or collaborations your program has had with local businesses or organizations?
Well, some of the big collaborations, we've got that specialty, the John Deere Tech program, which is like, what are we, one of 18 schools that teach John Deere service techs. The Ag Power and Diesel, which recently hooked up with Kubota. Mm-hmm. And then in the livestock and that, we have all our connections that way. Horticulture is more, I'm fortunate enough now, I've been at Lakeland long enough that a lot of my graduates are now in positions to own companies, and we make a lot of connections that way.
Do you find they still call you for advice?
Oh, yeah.
Can you tell us maybe a success story or a story about one of your former students who's doing really well out there?
Oh, gosh, how do I pick on one and not make the others? But no, young gentleman has a landscaping company and actually employs some of my other former graduates. Recently opened up a garden center, and so he's going on those two angles. It's really neat to see what he's done and where he's gone with his career.
A kid at Lakeland comes in, and he's a freshman, or he or she, I should say, and they're using you. You're their advisor, and they're interested in it. How do you convince them that ag horticulture at Lakeland College is the right path for them?
We just had some students in the other day, and I say career day. First thing, quit getting wound up about money. Money's important, but if you hate your job, it doesn't matter how much you make because you hate your job. So make sure you enjoy what you do. You've heard people say this: if you enjoy your job, you don't mind going to work.
Yeah.
I keep telling my students all over again how I got into teaching. I get to sit around and talk, and I get paid to do this, guys. This I'm having fun, and I'm just telling you stories. So make sure it's something you enjoy, something you become passionate about. Maybe what you need to do is go talk to somebody in that industry. I'll go send them with students. If they're having questions whether they need to go to school or not, I tell them to come sit in a class and talk to my students. Will sell as pitch as much as me. Come sit in one class and ask them their opinion of what I'm like, and hopefully I get a good response.
Yeah, that's a great answer. Ornamental horticulture. What is it if people do not know what those are?
Well, ornamental means when I went to school, there were two separate degrees. One, you ate it, and the other one was for looking good. So my background and training is for the looking good, the landscaping and the trees and the shrubs and that. So funny, formal education, I've never had any classes in raising vegetables, even though I teach a vegetables class now because plants are plants. But that's why the ornamental, that was two separate degrees back in the day.
I had to ask you. I just thought it was interesting.
Yeah.
What do students ask you the most? Your everyday, the students that have 2 or 3 classes every semester with Mr. Dyke Barkley. What do they ask you the most about?
I asked that same question this morning in lab. I said, "What do you got?" And they said, "Name of a plant." But then you won't give us the answer. You make us figure it out. So that's one thing. But what's available? What's opening? I think one of the things I run into, agriculture, wide, large, but mainly corn, soybeans, livestock, right? When you get into horticulture, I think where I'm seeing these students, they're all of a sudden opening up. You can have vegetables, you can have a landscaper, you can have golf course, you can have maintenance. There are a lot of different separate areas. I've got students that have gone into the later crop, whether you like it or not. They're raising marijuana. So how can I help a student or two that has interest in that and not, that's their passion, go for it. Make it a career and make it work. So I think trying to get where do I go and what's out there is probably where I get more of the serious, deep thinking stuff.
What about all these specialty peppers that are showing up now? Like people are into these hot peppers and sauces, and any students out there interested in that kind of stuff?
Boy, it changes. As soon as you, one of the good or bad things of teaching at a community college is everything changes fast. With only being a 2-year degree, about the time you get to know those students, then they're out the door, and they're finally making the connections and asking a lot more in-depth questions after they've been there a year and they've done their internship. But I don't right now. It's funny, I did a few years ago, and I think the biggest problem around here isn't the growing and the raising, it's can you make a living doing it? And I think that's been the bigger limitation in this local area. Do we have enough? Yeah. Can you make enough money selling that in a short window of the year to support yourself the rest of the year?
There you go.
Say, what are some common misconceptions about studying the field of horticulture?
That it's easy. That all you do is sit around and smell the flowers, I guess, so to speak. I'm thinking more back in my business. People get, you must be so lucky you don't do anything. But not like I don't do anything at my business, right? So again, like I ran my own garden center for years, and people, at that would come up and say that. I think the other thing is what's really interesting. You were talking about homeowners have questions in horticulture. And as soon as a student declares they're a hort student, they may even be before day one, people are walking up to them and asking them questions. I got this problem with my tomatoes. And I asked the students day one, how many people already came up to you finding out you're a hort student? And they assume you know everything about everything. And even I don't know everything about everything in horticulture. It's too big of a field.
Right.
I mean, it's too big. I can make some guesses. I can be logical, but horticulture is too big.
Interesting. Farming right now is, again, an industry that's changed. So when you talk to farmers, I mean, how is it changing right now, and what do you see as we move forward in the farming community?
Well, I think the biggie is technology and the investment. You don't just decide you're going to be a farmer unless what you would have to invest in the equipment alone. So a lot of it you have to have a connection. There are family farms and they're struggling. Who takes over and who land is land, and it's not getting any cheaper. So I think the money to get invested in has been a challenge for some people, and making it cash flow.
Makes sense. I want to go back to the beginning when you were talking about bugs and stuff. This summer, the cicadas hit for a while. Did you incorporate any of that into your classroom about the cicadas or not?
We did some. Maybe I shouldn't brag too much. I'm actually from Paris, and they didn't get that far. So I got really lucky and went, okay, didn't have to do that. We did some. The reason I kind of stalling on giving you a straight answer, my students actually go out on internship in April.
Yeah.
And they don't come back to the classroom until late July. So we were kind of out of that hole when it was hit, and everybody was. So we keep in contact, and we do some emails back and forth, and while they're on internships. But I didn't actually have them in the classroom when they hit. But a lot of the prep coming up, what could you do? And a lot of the prep was you couldn't do much. Just hope they didn't attack,
Yeah, it was weird. It's like the difference between Mattoon and Charleston.
Yeah.
Charleston was a lot worse than Mattoon.
And some of the people that got hit, like the very, very beginning, I was talking to somebody in Mattoon, and they were like, and then I'm like, they never got hit again.
Yeah.
So I don't,
Good, Kate.
I am curious. Do you ever address certain issues like, let's say, climate change, for example, or global warming?
All the time. I try not to be one of those instructors that talks about walking in the snow uphill, whatever that saying is, right? But even when we look in the books, and it talks about, these were winter killed in the bad winters we had in the 70s, and the students are thinking that's somewhere around the Civil War. But I mean, we have to talk about it a lot, more than I even want to. And here's the reasoning why. A lot of times you talk about, is a plant hardy? So does it handle 30 below zero? But what we're finding out is it isn't that below zero that's getting us. It's the fact that we're going from 60 to zero. How warm was it yesterday?
Yeah.
And we're supposed to be not only frost, but we're talking potential freeze. So we're making fast. And we don't acclimate. Well, the plants can't run in and put a coat on either. So I think we're bringing it up because we're seeing problems. And customers are frustrated, so they ask hort people. And you got to have an answer. So we've already addressed it and talked about it, and tell them it's not the fact that we had that 6 feet snow, which we haven't had forever.
Yeah.
But it's the fact that we went from 50 or 60 degrees to below zero. That's where we're starting to see problems.
Oh yeah, because I know we don't exactly get snow or precipitation in that regard too often, but the temperatures are obviously that's a factor.
Yeah, a lot of people may be familiar with hardiness zone. It's a rating you give a plant. Will it take like 10 below zero or 20 below zero? And they recently updated that. And so we went from a zone 5 here where we're sitting to a zone 6. My comment is the books are all written before that. You can't just all of a sudden grow plants that we couldn't grow here magically. Yes, we are getting a little warmer, but we still hit one night of 20 below last year. So that's where, for the student aspect, it's actually made your job harder, because now people are coming in and saying, well, I can grow this plant because, well, are you looking at the old book or the new book? And when I say book, we're even talking the internet. So that's been a sideline note where I've almost in every class we bring it up.
And do you think the climate change will get better or worse for the growing environment here in Central Illinois?
I don't think it's going to get better in the near future. I think whether you want to call it global warming or just we're having weird weather patterns.
Yeah.
We're having more storms. The rain that we're getting is coming in bigger waves. So yearly we're getting the same amount of rain, but it seems to be coming in big downpours, which changes how it flows in that. We're now seeing plants that are struggling because year after year we keep getting some summer droughts. So there's some plants that we may have to stop recommending because they just can't hold up.
I know invasive species have also hit Coles County in the last few years.
Yeah.
I've had the Illinois people on a couple of times, and they're talking about really that's something that people aren't talking about enough here in Coles County. Have you seen that?
We hear about it. We tend not to worry about it till it actually hits our doorstep. But you can actually see the ash trees that finally have kind of taken them all off the market, and they're slow to decline. Although there's a couple of diseases besides that emerald ash borer, but ash tree was the #1 tree in the state of Illinois, and they're slowly disappearing. So that's actually an example that hit. It took a while to get to Illinois. It took a while to get downstate. Bingo, it hit, and it's a problem.
Let's go back to a Lakeland College student. They come in day one. They want to be a horticulture major there at Lakeland. Can you take us through the 2 years, what they'll do, learn, and experience?
Oh, wow. So actually in my program, there's actually 10 different horticulture classes. So they have that introductory parts of a plant in that. There's a class in trees and shrubs, a class in landscape design, landscape construction and maintenance, a greenhouse, an annuals, a perennials, and I'm rattling a lot of names off. A lot of plants to learn, a lot of different names. Not only that, but learn how you select plants because plants are constantly being changed. So we talk about how to select, how to choose for an area. We have 2 big greenhouses there, 2,000 square foot of greenhouses. Today we were trying to get ahead of all these frosts coming in, and we dug up from outside a bunch of cannas, actually, hand propagated those, some tropical grasses. So we try to do a lot of hands-on that way. Construction class, we redid a patio. We'll do a retaining wall, we also raised some pumpkins, but then we laid the pumpkins where the wall goes. So, one of those teacher moments where you kind of didn't put things together, but that's okay. Pumpkins will be gone in a couple of weeks, and then we'll build that wall before the snow flies. That's going to be the rule. So try to make it very hands-on, try to make it very realistic. One of my styles with students either hate or love, there's an imaginary person called Patty Petunia. They have to answer every question on a test to that 50, 60-year-old gardener, not to me. I understand. I know the names. They can't talk over their head. So every question, every test is based on handling a customer. How would they answer a customer?
Okay. So you're really focused on the communication aspect of things. I like that.
I think one of the things that we keep getting when we bring in our advisory boards, one of those things that we hear over and over from our employers in the area, soft skills. We can teach them technical stuff. You guys don't have to train them everything, how to run everything, but we need them to be able to talk. And so I think I took that to heart years ago. And I mean, in horticulture, there are a couple of jobs where you don't talk, but even a landscaper's got to sell a landscape. Everybody's got to sell to a point, whether you're a full-time salesman or not, you got to sell yourself. So I think that's where I've taken it. And that's where I've kind of taken over a couple of the ag classes. I now teach the retailing and the ag salesmanship because I was a salesman all my life.
So are there any common miscommunication that happens with these customers that your students deal with commonly or so? I
think it's more of just not being confident. I don't want to sound like an old timer here, but messing with the phone too much. And,
I knew where you're going.
And you got to strike up a conversation. I keep telling my students a lot of times when I go to a trade show or I go to an educational thing, it isn't the seminar, it's the chit-chatting in between, right? And that's where you get 2 or 3 people to say, I had this trouble. How did you fix it? That's where they've got to learn to do that. They got to outreach. They've got to. And that's hard to teach, and that's not actually a class.
Oh yeah.
But
we're growing a generation of people who walk with their hand over. They can't.
Well, just when you fill out a resume, you also have to back up and say, it's great you won all these awards in high school, and that is great. You're in college now. We need to start this resume over, and we need to update it. And
Let's go. We're talking to Dyke Barkley today, Lakeland College professor. like when you that first day you walked into the first class teaching, at Parkland, it appears. So, how nervous were you? Can you take us to that day?
Oh, I had no idea what I was doing. I thought these students, and I guess I forgot what it was like to be a college student because I thought they're going to be so over my head, and I'm not. Whoa, I forgot how green I was when I first got into horticulture, right? Does that make sense? Or in any class. So I think bringing things down to their level, and then I found that in my case, because I've done everything, I've done a lot of this that I teach, I've done in my own real life, that I could just say, well, here's an example. Customer had this, how would you handle it? And then all of a sudden I realized I don't need that book. I just need to start giving examples. Or 25 years now, if you ask me a question, I'll probably take it back and make them, how would you guys have answered that? And they'll go, well, I'm not giving you how I want to know how you answered it, and then I'll tell you, see if you agreed. If you didn't agree with me, you're not right. But that, I'm only slightly opinionated, I tell my students.
Any other teaching methods that you follow that you just know when you're going into a class, I'm going this direction today?
Try to keep it real. Try to, if I see they're starting to doze off and not pay attention, then I need to get them up, make a move, or throw some question at them, or make them analyze something, or how would you handle this scenario? And that's some students love that and some hate that, but that's my style.
All right, we've got about a minute and a half left with Dyke Barkley. Any last questions, Kay?
Can you share any upcoming changes or new additions to the horticulture program that you might have not touched on yet?
To the hort program? No, I think I don't want to talk. Maybe you're going to look at a new greenhouse because we had some storm damage from that hurricane winds the other day. So it's got the ball rolling, and hopefully that may be something, but I may have overstepped there. But I know we're talking about it. But I think I'm just getting a lot of support in the ag division. I think that helps, and I'm seeing in the last couple of years a lot more young students come in because a lot of times I'm the oddball in the ag division. I have a lot of non-traditional. My oldest graduate in the program was 70, and I've had multiples in their 50s and 60s and 70s come back, which really changes the dynamic of the school, of the class.
All right, a few rapid-fire questions. Favorite thing to grow?
Perennials, black-eyed Susan.
Vegetable you love the most to eat?
Tomato.
Vegetable you can't eat, you would refuse to eat?
Brussels sprouts. Don't
wave
those things at me.
Halloween candy. What's your favorite Halloween candy?
Nope.
Not going there?
I have this. I don't need more.
The coolest plant on earth. What is the coolest plant that everybody should see once?
Sensitive plant. When you touch it, it goes to sleep. That makes everybody go ooh ah. Yeah, no matter what age they are.
What does Dyke Barkley have the most trouble growing?
Oh, I don't. Things from seed, because I don't have the patience to keep them watered.
What's your favorite restaurant around the area? Just curious.
Any Mexican restaurant, I'm at.
Oh, I love Mexican food, man.
Well, we appreciate you coming in, Mr. Barkley. It was good to meet you. I hope you had a good time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you
for helping out at Lakeland, getting you over here. Everybody have a great day. That's Dyke Barkley, Lakeland College Instructor. We are WEIU.